Happy 2019 for those of you I have not seen until this morning. As many of you know, but some of you may be here for the first time, and if so, welcome. This is our monthly Development Services Forum. This is meant as a time where we're able to get members of the development community, members of the public, as well as members of city staff who work on development issues together in a room so that we can share information, get your feedback, and also share learnings. So we usually have a different topic every month. And this month we actually were so eager to get your feedback that we have two topics. So I will not stand up here for very long. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Cole. I'm the head of Innovation and Economic Development. I often MC, but today, because we have a planning heavy agenda, I will be turning the mic over to Ethan Bindernagel, who is our planning manager, to introduce our topics for the morning. Thanks.
Thanks. I think that's the first time we've gotten applause on the intro. That's great. Thank you all. Okay, as Jessica mentioned, my name's Ethan Bindernagel, planning manager here with the city. We do have two planning heavy or related topics, and I'd like to, without further ado, just jump into them. We've got two presentations, one about transportation planning, another about design review guidelines that we're crafting. I'd like to turn this over to Ozzy Arce. He's an associate planner here with the city. He actually heads up our transportation planning efforts, including our transportation demand management strategic plan. But there's a better name for that, and I'll let him introduce it. And Ozzy, please take it away.
Great. Awesome. I'm hoping I can go without the mic, if that's okay, but let me know.
Oh.
Use this. All right. Never mind. All right. How's it going, everyone? Good morning. Thank you for the introductions, Ethan and Jessica. My name is Ozzy Arce. I'm an associate planner here with the city. I'm excited this morning because I get to introduce a topic that we launched at the end of last year. It's a transportation strategic plan called Rethinking Mobility. So what I'll do is I'll provide kind of an overview of why it is that we're doing this effort, trying to contextualize it, and then we'll jump right into the data. We'll just provide a preview this morning in hopes that you'll go into the online report and learn a lot more. So Rethinking Mobility. The project overview here. The city is committed to using transportation demand management strategies to decrease dependency on single occupant automobiles and increase transit use, ride sharing, and walking. So that's from the city's general plan, which is our guiding document, right? Transportation demand management, I'll get into what that is in a second, but essentially this is coming from our general plan, which was adopted in 2006. Also since 2006, we've seen this shift in how people move, right? With the introduction of Uber and Lyft, right? But also with this shift in how people, or where people want to live, right? We've seen this shift to an urban core around our transit centers, and even locally, we've seen how folks want to live near our downtown. It's an activity center. It's a good thing, right? But all of this has caused or required that cities, especially here, start looking at our transportation system in a more holistic way, right? We remove these silos and look at it as a transportation network. For that reason, the city applied for a grant through CCTA, the Transportation Authority here with the city, and we knew early on that no one would know what a transportation demand management strategic plan would be, right? Try saying that 5 times fast. And so we rebranded the effort to Rethinking Mobility. We onboarded Fair & Pierce, who's a local transportation consulting firm headquartered here in Walnut Creek. Kara is from the project team, and she will spearhead the second half of this presentation. The objective, the plan has 3 objectives, right? And the language is very similar to what I noted in the general plan, right? It's that notion of developing policies and programs to reduce single occupancy automobiles and encouraging active modes. In short, how can we get people to think beyond the vehicle, right? And this idea of transit first, especially in our downtown that's transit rich, especially that's close to our BART station, right? How can we promote this idea of taking transit? So what is TDM? At a very basic level, we've done a lot of great TDM here. It's essentially that idea, right? Active modes, reducing our dependency on the automobile. Locally, we know the free routes, right? We know the trolley here downtown. That's a TDM effort, right? Parking. Parking is the strongest TDM tool we have. There's a huge parking component to this. Line bike, for example, bike share, that's another TDM example. So we've done TDM locally, but what more can we do? Parking is a huge part of that. Like I said, we've studied parking a lot here in this city. But like I mentioned, we're starting to look at parking as part of our transportation system. And I know as part of this group, last year, Carla Hansen from the city manager's office was here talking to you all about parking strategies. And you all formulated some parking strategies along with some other stakeholders. And what we understood was that some of these aren't parking strategies, right? They speak to multimodal efforts, right? And so we recognize this. Staff saw an opportunity to merge the two efforts between the downtown parking experience outreach that Carla Hansen was doing from the city manager's office with this rethinking mobility effort. Again, that whole idea of a transportation network, right, where parking is a part of our discussion. So what have we done? Like I mentioned, we kicked off the effort at the end of last year with the parks effort at downtown, Walnut Creek Downtown's first Wednesday. We had an activity where folks kind of shared with us how they got here today. And it was an exercise where they understood that their individual decisions really impacted a whole system, right? As folks started to fill in the lanes, became more and more congested. So it was kind of a fun activity to do with folks. Similarly, we introduced the project at the Locust Street Farmers Market. It was a chilly morning, but nonetheless, we were out there along with our new meters, showcasing that to the community again, merging these two efforts here. But really what we want to introduce to you all today is this phase 2, which launched earlier this year. And what it is, it's an online report, and what you have in front of you is just an executive summary of the online report. And we want to emphasize that the report is online. There's a lot more to see there. The report has 9 parts, right? Everything to do with transportation. But what we want to cover today is just the first 3 parts, which I think this group would be the most interested in. And so I'll go ahead and pass the mic over to Kara, who will dive into the data.
Thanks. Thank you, Ozzy. So as Ozzy said, we're just going to give you a little taste of what's in the online report this morning and give you a high-level overview of some of the mobility patterns and trends in the city and talk a little bit about parking. But again, we really encourage you all to take a look at the information that's online. Also, underneath each part, there's an area where you can leave your comments. And we've been gathering some really useful information from that as well. So just very quickly, the purpose of this first phase, the second phase of this project, is to identify the needs, opportunities, and challenges associated with the city's transportation network, with the reason being so that can help us identify an initial list of mobility strategies for the city and stakeholders and the public to review. After reviewing that initial list of strategies, those will get refined and then eventually go into the draft and final transportation strategic plan. So first I want to talk about how Walnut Creek moves today. And what we did is we took a look at some census data from the most recent census data to look at, how do people who work in Walnut Creek travel to work? The majority, 80%, are driving. And Walnut Creek residents, how do they travel for non-work trips? And again, the majority, it's a little hard to see in the back, and I'm sorry for the lighter blue, but close to 80% of residents are driving for their non-work trips. A higher percentage are carpool, but again, for those non-work trips, carpooling in that case could mean your kid is coming with you to the store, or you're traveling with someone else to go see a movie or something like that. But how you travel does make a difference depending on where you live and where you're going. And what this graph shows is that on the left, for Walnut Creek residents who work within Contra Costa County, 72% of them are driving alone to work, whereas for Walnut Creek residents who work outside of Contra Costa County, only 50% of them are driving to work, and 40% are taking public transit, which I'm sure is not a surprise to most of you, since a lot of those people work in Alameda County or San Francisco County, and BART provides a great transit option. So in short, what are the needs, opportunities, and challenges associated with this? There's a need to shift more vehicle trips to sustainable modes, to provide more robust options for commute trips, particularly within Contra Costa County, and to really try and increase the share of people who are biking, walking, taking transit, and to further increase the share of carpooling. The challenge in all of this is that a lot of the vehicle trips that are happening are work-related trips, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next couple of slides. So employers are going to be a really important component of developing and implementing the strategies to try and reduce vehicle traffic. So let's dive into that a little bit more. The people who work in Walnut Creek, 77% of them live in Contra Costa County, and another 11% in Alameda County. But what's really notable about Walnut Creek is that there are 60,000 jobs and 30,000 employed residents, but only about 10,000 of those employed residents actually work within Walnut Creek. So you've got a lot of people commuting into the city for work and a lot of people commuting out of the city for work. And of those 30,000 employed Walnut Creek residents, about a third, 10,000 of them work in Walnut Creek, another third work outside of the county, and another third work within Contra Costa County. So there's a lot of vehicle traffic associated with work trips coming in and out of the city of Walnut Creek. What we did is we used another source of data, location-based services, which are essentially using the GPS device in your phone. And this is thousands and thousands of data, hundreds of thousands, millions of data points that are aggregated, and we can look at more specifically in real time where people are traveling. And so what you see at the bars at the top is we looked at the main employment destinations within the city: downtown, Shadelands, the Kaiser Medical Center, and John Muir, and looked, and what you see and that's what's reflected on the bars in terms of showing you for those four work locations where people are traveling from home to go to work there. And then the map on the left shows you roughly, in terms of the darker color of shading, where those people are coming from. So as you can see, a lot of people are traveling into work from Concord, Clayton, Martinez, and East Contra Costa County. Also some people from Walnut Creek and Alamo, Danville, and Tri-Valley. For non-work trips, it looks a little different. So for non-work trips, you've got much lower concentration from East Contra Costa County, still quite a few people from Concord, Clayton, Martinez, but things kind of shift a bit to the west, and you've got more people coming from Lafayette, Moraga, Orinda, coming in for recreation, shopping, other types of non-work trips. And then lastly, we took a look at what are kind of the main non-commute, non-work trip destinations within the core area of downtown Walnut Creek, and I'm sure it's not going to be surprising that the highest concentration are really in the core of downtown, where you've got all kinds of shopping and recreation going on, as well as some employment too. So that was not a surprise. So what does all this tell us? Walnut Creek is an employment, shopping, entertainment, recreational destination for Eastern Contra Costa County. And as a result of that, that's a great thing. The somewhat downside of that is that then you've got a lot of vehicle traffic that's associated with that as well. And so then really, what's the opportunity there in terms of thinking about transportation demand management programs, other investments in services, infrastructure, so that we can provide people more mobility opportunities to try to reduce some of those vehicle trips. And then the challenges that we're going to face in doing this is that traffic really is a regional issue. It's not just Walnut Creek. Walnut Creek obviously has control over its roadways, but a lot of people are traveling from other places in Contra Costa County and Alameda County, and it's really going to require partnerships with local jurisdictions and with county agencies as well. So lastly, I want to talk a little bit about parking. And I want to take a little bit of time to explain why we picked this title to talk about parking, whether it's a problem, a potential solution, or both. So as all of you know, parking is really important for access. People need to be able to get to where they want to go. They're frustrated when they can't drive and park and access the things that they want to access. At the same time, lots of free, readily available parking ends up creating more vehicle trips and more vehicle traffic. And so the problem is, what do you do about that? So that's the problem. The potential solution side of that is that, as Ozzy said earlier, parking management can be a very powerful traffic demand management tool. And so the idea behind that is that you want to make parking available for those people who really do need to drive. But for those people who have other options and other choices, and it could be for some of their trips, all of their trips, how can you price parking and manage it appropriately so that it's providing the right incentives and helping incentivize the kind of travel behavior that the city's trying to achieve. So this slide represents some of the key elements of parking management, and what was really notable about this is how much the City of Walnut Creek has done in terms of really progressive parking management. In fact, for a city of its size, it's actually one of the cities that has done the most in terms of parking management in the entire Bay Area. So as you know, the city's done a lot in terms of really using pricing and time limits on meters to try and shift some of that demand out of the downtown core into the surrounding areas to provide more available parking for the people who really do need to and want to park right at their destination. They've used the garages and signs on the garages to really incentivize people and try to get across that message of when you come to downtown, come downtown and park, and then walk around. We've created a great walking environment. People walking on the street gets them to stop in at shops that they might not have otherwise stopped in at, or grab a bite to eat. And then using parking technology that allows people to easily pay for their parking, to add more time to the meter, and allows the city to collect valuable data that enables them to better manage their parking supply. So again, as Ozzy alluded to earlier, there's a strong connection between parking and the city's goals for reducing vehicle trips and vehicle traffic. How can we better integrate those so that the TDM strategies and programs that the city is implementing are further reinforced by what it's doing on parking management and operations? There's a great opportunity to build on the city's successful parking management program. And the challenge is going to be, how can we enhance mobility options so that people don't feel like, if I can't park, I can't go. That's the last thing we want to happen. So with that, I am going to, again, encourage you to visit the online report and turn it back over to Ozzy.
Thank you, Kara. So again, that's 3 parts out of 9. There's topics that range, again, from biking to walking to where mobility space is moving in the future. We encourage everyone to check out the website, rethinkingmobilitywc.com, and then the web report is just /NOC, which is for needs, opportunities, and challenges. And so, we could spend probably hours talking about transportation and our local transportation system. So again, we just wanted to pique your interest as far as what's in the report. I do have the web report up, so I'd like to show you a few pieces of that while we're here. Again, you may have seen the main page already. What's great about using an online feature is that folks, rather than seeing things in a static report or provide feedback in a more traditional manner, we've created this. I'm just going to scroll down really quick. We've created YouTube videos that are interactive, but we have information on when we're going to meetings. But what I want to show you is this map that folks can pinpoint locations where they think they'd like to see improvements that relate to multimodal, bus routes, bus lines. And while the city, again, doesn't operate it, how can we work with our partners, not only external agencies, but also our public works department, to relay some of this information as far as needs and opportunities that some of our public see. And what's great is, folks can identify an issue and even provide a longer comment if they'd like as well. So there's a lot of great data on here that I think for the first time the city has access to, and I think folks can really take ownership of certain neighborhoods or comments and provide that feedback. And you can spend some time in looking through this even as a member of the public. But the other thing I'd like to show you is just one of the parts, which we did cover, which is part 1, and how Walnut Creek moves today. And just really quick, there's a lot more information in here, but the point that I want to make here is this: what do you think? And each part at the bottom has an area where folks can provide feedback at any time from the comfort of their home, or they could provide feedback in traditional ways via email or contacting the city. But we felt that this was a format that I think we want to test out at least and see how it goes. And so far, we've seen a lot of feedback, and as you can tell from the map, folks are really using the features. So that I guess concludes my presentation. But for the purposes of time, I'm happy to take some questions, and Kara's here to answer some questions as well. But we kind of want to hear what surprised you, if you have any reactions to the data that you did see, or what maybe didn't surprise you as you heard us kind of talking. So that concludes my presentation, everyone. Thank you for your time.
So, just wanted to highlight, if there are any questions, I'm going to be walking around with the microphone. We want to make sure that we record. Because we are recording it, we want to make sure that we do capture your questions for the video. If we don't capture your smiling face, at least your voice. And then secondly, we do have, this is again an advance in technology, Facebook Live. We're Facebook Living this event. And we do have Liz Payne over there at the table near the board. She is monitoring the online broadcast. And if there are any questions for those of you who may be watching at home via Facebook Live, please feel free to type in any questions on the board there. And if there are any questions, Liz will raise her hand, relay them to all of us. And we do have a question. Sir.
My question is, has there been any study as far as maybe more detailed about what the new residential impact downtown is, what the actual, traffic count has been by them? What has it been less? Has it been more than expected? Just interested in, again, all the development that's happening. It's what actually has been the impact.
I mean, we see it from a trend, and we're preaching to the choir here when I say that there's a shift now where people want to live, right? We haven't gone down to the detailed level to analyze traffic counts, I think, in that way. But from a transportation planning lens, this document very much speaks to, shifting people's attitudes towards their modes today, but also how can we build for the mobility of the future, right? And how can we position the city or via policies or programs to entice a population here that may not necessarily need a vehicle, right? And so how can we either discuss parking requirements, or how can we discuss parking pricing, and how can we work with partners like LimeBike or these other shared micromobility services to provide those mobility options for folks. And so while we may have not gone down to the details, I think at a larger level we understand that trend just like many of you do.
We have a question in the back of the room. One moment.
More of a minor comment. First of all, this is very excellent. This is fantastic data. The city did a great job here. It partially answers the question. If you look at what's happening with residential, view Walnut Creek as the center of a 350,000 person metro. So it's a financial and retail center, so you commute in and out. So if you didn't have geographic boundaries, we would be Pleasant Hill, parts of Concord, Alamo, Danville, and Lafayette. What happens with residential, the first constituency that's moving in are people with jobs in Oakland and San Francisco. And then you have people who are downsizing coming from the other areas. And there's usually a lag effect as how it affects employments. So there was just an article today that a third of the people who work in San Francisco with hour commutes from Walnut Creek are getting tired of that. And so after a 5-year period, is when the lag expires, you'll see jobs then follow the new tech demographic that's moving into these apartments.
Thank you for that.
One interesting thing I thought that came out of the PowerPoint was the number of residents who are working here, but only about a third, work and live here at the same time. That was interesting. But the one comment in regards to, oftentimes these transportation plans is, they're so focused on the transportation aspect of it and improving mobility that they kind of lose sight of the retailer. And the retailer, wants that car in front of their shop. They want the visibility, and sometimes planning ideals, if you will, can get in the way of that or forget about that. So just a comment there. Thank you.
I hear you. And there's a lot of yes. And I think traditionally we think parking. I'm from a small town where you're used to parking in front of the place that you're going to. And I think a lot of our folks downtown here and our retailers kind of still have that mentality. And I think from, again, a transportation planning lens, how can we show them that maybe providing that stall instead for example, bike share or scooter share parking will even bring more people to their businesses, right? And there's data to back that up. And it's just a matter of working with these business owners to tell them we're partners here and we want to work together to make you successful. And these are the alternatives that we can discuss. And so we appreciate that comment.
You mentioned Lime bikes, and it seems to me that the usage of that is going down, at least the availability of those bikes in the city. Can you give us your summary? I think it was under a testing program here.
It was. Thank you for your question. That was actually a part that we decided to cut out for the purposes of time. But part 4 is bicycling, and we do go into the details of Lime bike share data. Just really high level, we've seen in about a 1-year pilot over 26,000 rides, or trips, I should say, and that's about 9,000 riders. And we've seen about a half-a-mile distance in their usage and about a 13-minute average trip length. So 26,000 trips in 1 year. But very good note. You've noticed that the bike share business model, in a sense, has shifted to a lot of different micromobility vehicles, for example, scooters, right? And so the question that we're asking also is, what's the right type of vehicle type here in Walnut Creek? It may be bicycles, it may be scooters, but the companies themselves are asking themselves that same question, is what's the future of shared micromobility? And so we're working continuously with Lime and other folks to see if those type of services can come to Walnut Creek, because again, it's about providing those mobility options. Yes.
Hi. First of all, I think this map is rather terrifically fun, so thanks very much. What I was wondering about is you guys are clearly getting a good handle on what the needs are at the moment, but could you speak a little bit to how you're managing to forecast what the regional drivers are for where people are moving back and forth?
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, no, that's a as long as I don't fall down. That's a great question. I think our focus really has been on looking at what's happening more or less in real time, and not so much on, for example, like using a travel demand model to forecast what's going to happen in the future. I think that's a good point, and it's certainly that's something that we can take a look at. It's something the city's looked at as part of the specific plan work that it's done for the North Downtown Specific Plan and West Downtown Specific Plan. And I think it's in terms of some of the other trends that we're seeing, so we're thinking about those as well. I think that is something that we can take a look at and incorporate into the next phase, and we're coming up with a list of strategies and thinking about what's going to be happening in the future. So, but that's a great point. Thank you.
Keeping an eye on the time, we have one other presentation. We have room for one more question, and here it is.
It was just a comment and piggybacking off of the bike share and alternate transportation modes. I know that I've also noticed a downshift in the bike share program, and I think one thing maybe to consider, or if you guys aren't already looking at it, is ways to direct and inform users of that, how they can best utilize and get the traffic out of the downtown. So I know, as one of the 1/3 residents who lives and works in Walnut Creek, I often see the bikes, around, and I know Berkeley has a model where it's very clear where you can ride the scooters and bikes to and from. There are really clearly delineated drop-off destination points around public transit hubs, and that might be something for the city to think about too.
Great point. It's just a different type of model as far as what bike share is, right? Whether you have docked with the stations or dockless. We went here with the dockless, but when we did survey residents about their top concerns for this bike share program, one of them was parking, and so how can the city work with these companies to come up with maybe preferred parking zones? But also the second concern was that there's too few bikes. And so that to us, gave us information to know that when we bring a program and we think to rush to set maximums on these fleet types that are, again, providing a mobility option to our residents and visitors, we rush to set a maximum because we were concerned of an oversaturation of these bicycles, yet we didn't think to set these minimums, right? And so, you know, that's the whole point of a pilot, is how can it further inform the work that we do. And so for the, you know, I appreciate all of your comments and questions this morning. I'm going to leave my card. And again, please visit the website. Our contact information's on there. Go through the parts. There's a total of 9, and you only saw 3 of them this morning. So, and it's rainy outside, so you can spend some time indoors on your laptop. So I appreciate everyone's time this morning. Thank you.
Excellent. Ozzy, Kara, thank you very much for your efforts and your input, and we thank all of you for your input. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and as Janine pulls up her presentation and prepares, I just wanted to remind all of you who are in attendance, I see actually a couple of new faces. Welcome, as Jessica mentioned at the top. If you have not yet signed in at the table, the half-circle table here near the entrance, please be sure to sign in so we can keep you informed of our next upcoming events. In fact, we have one of these every month, second Wednesday of every month, and the next one will be in March. The topic is to be determined, or at least the announcement as to the logistics and whatnot. That'll come out from Jessica Cole, who heads up this normally and MCs this event normally. So look for an email from her, and if you want to remain in contact, please be sure again to sign in or sign up, and we'll have your information ready and available. We're going to turn our attention to Janine Cavalli and her efforts with the Design Review Guidelines update. Janine, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Janine Cavalli. I'm a senior long-range planner here with the city, and I'm coordinating our update to the citywide design review guidelines. This morning, I'll just give you a quick overview of what the project is, and then we'll actually have an opportunity for you to kind of get up, stand up, move around, look at some of the design topics that we've identified that should be addressed as part of this update, and to give your feedback on what ideas you may have or issues you may have that you think should be addressed as we craft these this updated guideline booklet. So just a quick overview. I'll be giving a project introduction. I'll also be clarifying what design review guidelines are for those of you that may not be as familiar as others. I'll give you a quick project timeline, and then identify for you what the other opportunities are for participating in this project. I'll highlight what the next steps are, and then as I mentioned before, we'll give you an opportunity to participate and get involved here a little bit more hands-on this morning. Yes. Still haven't had my coffee yet, apologize for that. So project introduction, again, this is an update to our 1996 design review guidelines. So it's a over 20-year-old document. How many of you are familiar with this document or have referenced it for your projects? Okay, good. So a number of you are familiar with it. Some of them aren't so much. So I'll give a really quick overview for those who may not be familiar with it in just a minute. So, you know, a lot of the content in this document is actually still quite relevant and well written, so we're not going to start from scratch. So those of you that are familiar with it, don't worry, a lot of the same material will be in there. But we will be focusing new guidelines on the gaps. So what do I mean by the gaps? Well, we're looking at the document and looking at what's being built today, and some of the guidelines aren't addressing some of the new types of development, such as mixed-use development, for example. So we'll definitely be adding some new guidelines on that regard, as well as modernizing the existing guidelines for current best practices. So there's been a lot of new best practices around sustainable stormwater management, also referred to as C3. So that'll be another new topic that will be addressed in the guidelines. And then finally, we want to make the document more user-friendly. So we'll be looking at maybe reformatting it, organizing it, having some new photos and graphics and things like that to make it, again, more user-friendly. So the purpose of the design review guidelines is to promote quality architectural design, site planning, and landscape development in Walnut Creek. So what this slide really shows here is the distinction between what you may find in our zoning code ordinance and what you would find in our design review guidelines. So whereas the zoning code, or the zoning ordinance rather, sets the kind of building envelope, or what you see here as this kind of big box, it tells you things like the height of the building, the setbacks, the floor area ratio. So just again, just the sort of building envelope. Whereas the design review guidelines get into the city's expectations for what the design details are of those buildings, of that site plan. So looking at building materials, building articulation, landscaping, parking layout, circulation, so all of these details. So you kind of, these pictures do a really good job of kind of explaining the difference better than I can with words. So back to the project. We were given City Council direction. City Council gave us direction to complete an update to design review guidelines by September of this year. So that really drives the timeline that you see in the graphic here. We began the project at the end of last year by forming a city working group, which involves or includes members of city staff as well as 2 members from the Design Review Commission. We have some members in the audience today that are part of that city working group. If you wouldn't mind standing up briefly, I can introduce you all. So Ethan Bindernagel, who you've met already, is one of the planners. Haley Crawford, Ken Nodder, and Chip Griffin, all the planners. And then from our engineering department, we have Kathleen Tarantieff, and Ryan Cook. We also have 2 design review commissioners that are not here today, Joseph Gorney and Casey Case. So that group will be meeting throughout the project to prepare the content of the design review guidelines, as well as make sure we identify opportunities to reach out to the community and stakeholders. So we did develop, one of the first things we did was develop a community engagement strategy. And I'll go over that on the next slide really briefly. We then drafted a list of the design topics that we think need to be addressed as part of this update. Those are all included on the exhibits here on the wall. And as I mentioned, you'll have an opportunity to get up, take a look at them, and provide comments on those in a few minutes. We'll then spend the next few months through the end of May crafting the design guidelines, and we'll have a public review draft at the end of May available, which we'll take to the design review and planning commission before we then take that all the input received from the public, commission, and council, prepare a final draft for adoption that will bring to the commission, design review commission in August, and city council in September. So as I mentioned, there will be opportunities in addition to this evening to provide your input. We're doing focus group meetings in February. This is one of them. I'll talk about the other one in just a moment. Then we're going to be launching an online survey in March. This will be focusing, we call it a visual preference survey. So it's an opportunity for you and the members of the community to identify what your design preferences are for certain topics. We're not going to be looking at all 50 or 60 of these design topics online. We're going to be focusing in on what the new topics are. So as I mentioned earlier, mixed-use development will likely be one of the topics that we look at, and that'll be in March. Then after we draft the document, we're going to be looking for folks to volunteer to do some usability testing. What that means is we want to make sure the document is legible, is clearly understood. So we're going to be inviting folks, looking for volunteers to be part of that group that reviews the document. If you're interested, let me know, let one of the planners know. We'll take down your name and really be thankful for you to volunteer to do that. Make sure the document is legible and clearly understood. And then finally, the final opportunities for engagement will be at the various public hearings. There's going to be a minimum of 4. So a lot of opportunities for input. And then finally, we have our project website. I have it listed up here. It's the city's website, www.walnut-creek.org/DRG. That's DRG for Design Review Guidelines. And on there is a bit of information about the project, opportunities for when the next meetings are. And then there's also, you can plug in your email if you want to be notified about project updates. So next steps, we're doing kind of a repeat of what we're doing here today. Next Thursday, 5:30 to 6:30, same location here at City Hall, 3rd floor conference room. So if your friends, colleagues, neighbors weren't able to make it this morning, please do let them know that there's another opportunity to give their input on the design topics for the update. And then, as I mentioned before, we're targeting the launch date for our online survey to begin March 4th, and that'll run for about 3 weeks. So before we move to the activity, I wanted to see if there were any questions that you might have about the project and the process. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the activity. So again, this is your opportunity to tell us what you think should be addressed, what we should be considering as we draft the design guidelines. So sounds like some of you are familiar with the document as you've worked through it before, where there's some things that weren't clear, that were missing. Now is your opportunity to speak up, let us know so we can make adjustments. Also, if you've worked on any recent projects and the design guidelines weren't really addressing certain aspects of your project, again, this is your opportunity to give us that feedback. The guidelines are the topics are listed here, organized in 4 different topics: site planning, architecture, landscape and trees, and signs. So what we invite you to do is to come up, look at the topics, take a pen and post-it notes, and just feel free to write your comments and post it on the sheets. Any questions about the activity? Yes.
I just asked Jeannie if it would be all right, and it may be more comfortable for you to sit at your table if you can see the topics up here. We will bring around a couple of the Post-its. If you want to take out a pen and drop some notes on a Post-it, fine. If you'd rather get up and stretch your legs, come on up to the table, do that as well. But we have about 15 to 20 minutes here. We usually go to about the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, so feel free. Stretch your legs if you wish, or wait a moment. We'll bring around some Post-its, but thank you for your input.
There's actually 2 more sheets I forgot to mention. If there are design topics that you don't see listed here, feel free to write them here where it says other design topics. And then if there's other people you think we should be reaching out to as part of this process, please, if you can give us their name here, and we'll make sure we invite them to a future meeting. Thank you. All right, looks like we got a lot of good input up here. Thanks, everyone. This concludes our meeting, but if you still have some more comments, I'm going to stick around a little bit longer for you to post your comments and notes. Thanks again, everyone.